Thank you. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for the warm welcome. Yes, this is my second session for codebar this year. And this is my first time. I mean, this year was the first time I was speaking at codebar, and I was really excited. So yeah, all that excitement is finally taking form. It's finally, materializing into something useful. So really excited for that. A big thank you to all the attendees for joining in. I see people from London, Amsterdam, India, Oxford, and thank you so much for taking out the time. And now, without any further ado, I think it's the right time that we get started now. But before we get started, an important thing is that you have Unity installed in your system. So I believe Kimberly might already have shared the links with you. So can we have a quick show of hands if you have the editor installed with you? If not, I've just shared the links once again, and you can just go ahead and download it right away. So it's not an issue. So I see Ashwin has the editor installed. Yeah, Martha has it too. Okay. Okay, sure. Take your time. So the interesting bit is that for installing Unity, right, which is the game engine that we will be using today to create our game, you need to first have Unity Hub. And Unity Hub lets you install various, different versions of Unity. It lets you go back to some older ones. So you can create the same game in Unity 6, which is like the latest version of Unity, which is just released. Or you could go back to some probably, stable version like 2021, right? So we will be making a game today on Unity 2021. And yeah, before I think while the folks download the editor, I can just go ahead and introduce myself and talk about what we are building today and why we chose Unity for doing the same when we have an n number of game development engines. Hi, I'm Harshita. I'm live from India right now. It's pretty late in the evening. I'd rather say it's nighttime here. I'm a software development engineer by profession, and yes, a large part of my job involves making games. So it sounds cool. Whether it is or not is something we'll figure out today while we make a game together or while we try to create a prototype together today. So apart from making games, you'll find me, speaking at conferences to the likes of Codebar. So I really enjoy talking about gamification, about tech communities, student communities, and stuff like that. And when I'm doing neither of this, then you'll find me immersed in, stuff like cryptic crosswords or probably reading fictional novels or probably writing stuff. So yeah, just keep giving me, some indication of whether you have the editor ready with you or not. I see a handful of people have it. Um, and if you're in the process, just let me know. That'll let me know how long I have to wait or when we can, just start. All right. We'll wait. We'll talk about why we're choosing Unity today while you're in the process of downloading Unity itself. So, first things first, if you're wondering how I got introduced to this tool, I learned about it in college, So in college, we had these clubs where students used to make augmented reality applications, right? So virtual reality and augmented reality had become this huge thing back then. This was around, I think, 3 years ago. And it had become a huge thing, and everybody was really fascinated, and everybody was creating AR applications. And the tool that they were using was Unity, right? So the good thing with Unity is that you can also create AR applications with it or VR applications with it. So yeah, that's how I eventually started experimenting with the tool in hackathons. I later realized how it is used to create so many powerful multiplayer games. And yeah, that's how Unity happened, right? There are some other great game development tools, Unreal being a really popular one. There is Godot too. Godot is open source. But the thing I like so much about Unity is that how you can achieve so much through that one single tool, and how out of all the tools that I mentioned, which is Unreal and Godot, it is the most beginner friendly. So game development might not feel like, a domain which might be, extremely beginner friendly, or you might not find a lot of people engaging in the same. But Unity makes this process very easy. And we will be programming in Unity today in C sharp. So if you have prior experience with the language, that's great. But even if you have absolutely no experience with the language, which is C sharp, we'll be proceeding in a way that you learn on the go. Uh, so if you get Unity 6, you might face certain problems in using the package. So we're going to use a package, and a package is nothing but a set of assets, right? So we are going to import a 3D player and a platform where they're going to run. So you might face an issue if you try to use a 2021 package in a Unity 6 editor. Yeah, sure, sure. I'll resend. I'll resend.
Someone has asked, can they follow this workshop if they've got Unity 6?
Yeah. So that's what I answered, that following the workshop in Unity 6 might be slightly difficult because the starter files that we're going to use, they're for Unity 2021. And I think they would work fine for Unity 2022 as well. But Unity 6, which is basically Unity 2023, that might pose little problems because it is really new and the packages might not work there. Yeah, exactly. So it will most likely ask extra questions to upgrade the assets we'll be installing. This is going to be a built-in. Right. I see. So while you're installing your editor, I think it'll be fine if I go ahead and, start showing what the editor looks like to the rest of the attendees. I hope that's fine. Yeah, any Unity 2021 version is okay. Any works. All right then. I'll just go ahead and I'll just show what Unity actually looks like, right? Is my screen visible? Kimberly, could you just confirm? All right. So this thing that you see here is Unity Hub, right? And this is where in the installs tab is where you would see the existing Unity versions that you have. So right now I have Unity 6, which, which we were discussing, whether it's fine if we create a project in Unity 6. And I also have Unity 2021, which we will be primarily using for creating a project today. This is the projects tab where whatever we create, that'll be lined up here. So if you're installing Unity for the first time, this would be an empty panel for you. But since I have an older project here, I can already see it here. So there are segments like Unity Learn, and the package, the package or the starter files that we are using today, they're also collected from Unity Learn, right? So Unity Learn is like an open source tutorial, what do I say? A tutorial portal where they teach you how to build games in Unity, and you can always experiment, and it's like a community, it's like a forum altogether. Coming back, we'll be creating a new project now. Is it fine, Annie, if we start, or do you want me to wait?
Can you wait for a moment? It downloaded, but it says installing, and I don't know. It's been hanging there for a while.
All right, all right. We'll wait. We'll wait for a while. We'll wait for a while. Meanwhile, can I get a quick show of hands for how many of you are working on Unity for the first time? Is there anybody who has probably experimented with the tool before, or are folks completely new to Unity? I see. Okay. Oh, wow. So, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correct. Is it Jodai or Jody?
Jodie W.
Jody W. Oh, wow. I'm nervous now. Now that you coach it on codebar, I'm nervous. Right. So I see it's a mixed lot. There are people who've, experimented with the tool. I see there are game developers, there's a code bar coach, and there are people who would be trying it for the first time. So yeah, that's an interesting mix, right? Uh right. So I think while the installation bit takes place, we can proceed really slowly in the beginning bit, right? I'll just show you how we'll be creating a new project, right? So it's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. This is Unity Hub. We already know which versions we have installed with us. Now we'll be creating a new project. So when I go here, I I see some I see some templates, right? I can see something known as a universal 2D or a universal 3D SRP, right? Or a high definition 3D SRP. What I see here is the editor version, which is Unity 6 right now. I'll change it to Unity 2021, which is important because the starter package that we are using is Unity 2021. So yeah, uh, let's go with the opted-in built-in render pipeline right now. Let's give a nice name to a project. Anybody has any suggestions? You can just unmute and go ahead and we'll probably just give a name. Brownie points if the name has code bar in it, something like code bar runner. Anybody who has some other suggestion? All right. So from here, you can choose whether you want a 2D project, a 3D project. The good thing is that you can also create 2D projects within 3D projects. Yes, Annie, please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, not about this, but about installing version 2021. Although I have installed another version previously, it was a long time ago, so I've kind of forgotten. After I, did the .exe setup, installed, and it finished, like the installation wizard completed. I have the hub open, but I don't see the 2021 version there. Do I have to go into locate, or do I still have to click on install editor in the Unity hub?
I see. So when you open Unity Hub, do you see this installs tab, or is it some different view altogether?
Yeah, I see the installs tab.
And you're seeing that over here, you're not seeing the 2021 editor, right?
Correct.
Right. So probably try locating if you feel that there's a different location it might be at. But I think if you do not see it here, you might need to install it altogether.
Oh, so I just realized that before you mentioned to click on locate, I clicked on install editor to see what would happen, and then I scrolled down
Right.
and it gave, like, one of the options is Unity 2021.3. So I guess I can install that one.
Right. You can go ahead and install that. Right.
Awesome.
Right. So yeah, while you install, we'll just go ahead and create a new project. We'll give it a, since we're creating, by the way, the game that we're creating today, I'm sure everybody has, undergone that phase of frustration whenever there's a network outage, but there's this little Chrome Dino that you can, make jump over cacti. So we'll be creating something like that today. We'll have a player, we'll be making them jump over certain obstacles, and we'll be making sure that they navigate through a 2D platform, right? So that's what we're going to create today. Since it's a, what do I call it? Since it's a player runner, we can just call it a code bar runner or something of that sort. You can choose a location of your whatever deems fit to you. I'm just letting it be desktop right now, and I'll just create my project right away. Okay. Okay, we forgot to change the version. We forgot to change the version to Unity 2021. And now we'll be having Unity 6 open. So we'll be probably changing the version here, or let's see how it goes if I change it from here. I think this won't be the most optimal approach, and I might be getting some package errors once I open the project. This is a hunch. If that's the case, we'll have to go back and create the project once again. Let's see. Right. There we go. So Jody was right. It's better to, delete the project, or I mean, just let the project be and start again rather than changing the install version from here, because there are always some package errors that come into picture when we do a thing like that. So I'll just leave the trial right here. I'll go back to projects. I'll create my new project. I saw a very nice name in the comments called codebar jump. So I'll go with that name. I'll make sure to change the editor version to 2021 this time, because that's what we're looking forward to. And yes, I've created my project now. And there we go. This is the editor. I hope this does not feel intimidating. If it does, don't worry. We'll be gradually going through every section of this entire editor, what each bit does. So yeah. Right. So this is what the editor feels like. The errors that you see here, so these are mostly caching errors. As soon as we, start developing, start writing our code, or as soon as we start adding assets to our project or game objects to our project, we won't be facing these issues, or even killing this instance of Unity and reopening it again would solve our issues. So yeah, this is what Unity looks like. There are different sections to it. This is the scene view. I find it to be the most important segment of, whatever we'll be building here. So think of yourself as a director of a movie, right? So if you're a director, there's a setup where you add all the scene elements, you add all the props, and then there's this final, what do I say? There's this final camera capture that the eventually audience gets to see. So the scene is the window where you will be adding all of your game objects. Let's say if you have a player, you will be adding your player to the scene. If you have a background, you will be adding it here. And the game view is where the final render will be shown to the users or to anybody who plays the game, right? The interesting thing is that whatever you see in the scene also has to be a part of the hierarchy. what is the hierarchy? Let's see. Uh, if you already have your editors open, you can try experimenting alongside. Annie, don't worry. Right now, we're not like diving right into the game. We're just like learning the basics while the editor installs for you. And once you're done, just let me know. Just unmute and let me know. And then we'll dive into the game right away. So yeah, so this is the hierarchy. Once you're here, let's just try and, experiment a bit. Just right click here and create a 3D object called a cube, right? Uh, let's give this cube a name. Let's give this cube any random name. Let's call this cube codebar cube, right? So what you see here, I'm shifting it here. In case of any questions, please feel free to just mute and ask because I've just restricted the window here. Yeah. So this is the hierarchy. Everything that you'll be adding here has to be here, right? And everything that you add here is a game object. So this codebar cube that we added here is a game object. Why we're using this terminology here? Because we'll be using the word game object in the code too, while we'll be, creating the game eventually. The good thing is that every game object has this inspector associated with it. And in the inspector, there are some properties listed, right? So let's say you've added this cube. For sure, this cube has some, some dimension. It is positioned somewhere in this scene. All of that we can determine from here and we can manipulate from here. So since we've added this cube here, let's say you want to change its position, you want to move it upwards, right? This is how it looks in the scene right now, in the game view right now. Let's say you want this to be moved slightly upwards. What would you do? You can use these arrows here. And while you move this cube using the arrows, what you will see is that the position is being manipulated in the inspector. What we can also do is we can directly change it from here. And you'll see that the position just moved. Similarly, you can, just modify the rotation. I'll change it to something like minus 75 degrees. These X, Y, Z represent the three axes that we have. We can scale up and scale down the cube. Let's say we don't want it to be a cube anymore and we rather want it to be a cuboid. I can just change the dimensions of it this way. Within the scene, you can use these tools to just, navigate inside the scene. To, if you want to say, let's say, move this, just feel free to go here. If you want to rotate it, you can achieve the same thing that you did here from here itself. And if you want to scale something, you can use these, right? Let's see how it looks in the game view, right? So whatever you do here, like a director, that is going to have an impact in the final render, which is the game view. The interesting thing is that right now we're in a scene and this is the project window. In the project window, you can have stuff which you might not want to immediately add to your game, but you can add it later, right? So the thing is that whatever you add once in the hierarchy eventually becomes a part of the scene. But let's say there is some audio that you want to add in your game and you do not want that audio to be there in the scene right now. What do? You can probably just create a folder here. You by right clicking, creating a folder. You can create a folder for audios. And over here, you can create out of all these things, you can create probably an audio, an animation, a timeline, a GUI skin. So there are lots of things. We won't be, going into the nuances of each of these. It's better that we deep dive into each of these as we eventually build our game. So yeah. I see some people facing issues with installation. Would you want to unmute and discuss what issues you're facing with the installation bit? Oh, wow. This is new.
I don't know if Claudia wanted to go first, but I just wanted to mention that this has happened to me a couple of other times, although I should have written down what eventually made it work on the previous times. But yeah, it's been like stuck on 99% for quite a long time now. I don't know if that's the exact same situation that Claudia's in. But yeah, I even paused the Mac build support installation and just to like let it keep going with the editor application. But yeah, they keep saying like downloading 99%, 28.8 megabytes per second, and like the progress bar looks basically full, but it's been there with no other progress for quite a long time.
Do you think it could be a storage issue? Do you have ample storage for the editor to
I
be?
I do have a lot of storage. Yeah, my computer is relatively new and it has a lot of storage, so it's definitely not that issue.
I see. And you're saying that you've already tried terminating, this installation instance and then reinstalling again?
Yeah, what I actually did was the first one that I was trying to install today, I cancelled that and went to the download archive because I remember people telling me to do that previously in the past. And I thought, okay, let me maybe try and download a slightly um, different 2021 version and not do the Mac build support and just the editor application, but is basically doing the same thing again, just stuck at 99%.
And which 2021 version is this? Is this 2021.3 point? I mean, could you just name the version?
Yeah, so this one that I'm trying right now is 2021.3.0 F1.
All right. Would you mind trying 5F1 or 26F1?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think this could be an issue with the, yeah, I think just try installing some alternate version or not the same version again if you've faced a problem with this very same version before.
Yeah, cool. Oh no, it was a 2023 version that I, in the past, like long time ago, had issues with. So yeah, I think I'm just I don't know, maybe I'm just unlucky with Unity. But yeah, I'll try the other versions. Thank you.
Yeah, let's give one quick shot to some other version. Meanwhile, the rest of the folks, I see that in the chat I might have attached a link to a file called a prototype starter file. So we can start installing that. We can start installing that and getting more familiar with the entire engine with those starter files rather than, with just a cube that we have right now in the scene. So yeah. Even I have the starter files downloaded with me. I'll try to now. Uh, Once you have the starter files downloaded, uh, let's go ahead and see what you have to do, right? So let's just start with the game steadily, while the people who are, facing issues with the editor can install. And yeah, please feel free to, just unmute if you face a weird, totally different issue that you feel we might have a solve to, right? So yeah, anything that you add, just a quick summary as to where we were. So this is the hierarchy. Whatever that will be going in the scene, whether it's your player, whether it's the obstacles that you'll be jumping upon, that has to be a part of the hierarchy, right? You can change the direction of these, I mean, not the direction, but the order of these objects in the hierarchy. We'll see how that impacts stuff. You can also create children objects and parent objects within this hierarchy itself. So let's say you want to have an object which is, let's say, a child object of this code bar cube. What would you do? You would right click here, you would just, um, create, let's say, a sphere. And yeah, this is a sphere. However, I do not see a sphere right now. Why won't I be able to see it? Because its dimensions, I think, are coinciding with the dimensions of this cuboid that we have. I'll just change it to 2, 2, 2 or something like that. And okay, it looks like something like this, which is slightly, yeah, we can modify its scale, its dimensions. Uh, the behavior that the parent and the children object exhibit is that whatever movement, or let's say if I move the parent object, child object would be obligated to move in the same way, right? However, if I move this sphere, which is a child object of this cube, the cube will not move. So this property becomes very helpful, when we are designing UI elements and when we want one UI element to behave in a certain way, let's say in accordance with its parent element. So yeah, and when I say element, I'm talking about these game objects here. Everything that we add here is eventually a game object. So yeah, uh, we learn more about game objects here on the go. Um, I hope I hope nobody's facing issues while downloading the starter files. There is a link saying prototype starter file. I hope everybody has that installed. If not, you can just unmute and let me know. So I have my starter files installed. And what I would want to do now, what I would want to do is I would want to bring those starter files inside my Unity project. How would I do that? I would go to the assets menu, and inside the assets menu, I would want to import a package, which is a custom package. And from downloads, I can just go, okay, I can just go and download my prototype 3 Unity package. So the file that you have to import, the extension for this file would be .unity package. And it is just a set of assets and, probably audios, backgrounds, images, etc., that we would be using in the game. So that we don't have to, go through the overhead of downloading each of them individually. So you can just click on open. You will get a prompt which would be asking you what all materials or what all stuff from the entire package you want to import. Just make sure that everything is checked. You can just do that by clicking all here and click on a quick import. I see a lot of questions or a lot of conversation going on in the chat. Right. So our package is installed right here. You would see this folder called course library, and that has been added to your assets now. Inside this course library, there's a bunch of folders. They have some characters, they have some, obstacles. But the most interesting thing is that inside the scenes folder, you will see this scene called prototype 3. So just jump to the scene. You can just jump to the scene by double clicking on it. And wow. Okay, I was not expecting that. Uh, all right. So what we have here is, so what we were supposed to have inside the scene was a background and a ground, which we see. However, for some reason, I see that the mesh is not rendering correctly, and we see you know, a pink material that is being rendered here. So what we'll do here is we'll just delete this ground game object from the scene, and we'll create probably our own ground object. So we'll just delete it. So we'll just do the same steps again. We'll create a 3D object. Let's just call it a cube, but we want to make it look like a ground. So we'll scale it in a way that it actually looks like a ground, right? So we want it to be flatter. We want it to have some, okay, that looks like a wall. We'll go here. And yeah, that pretty much looks like a ground. If you want to pan across the scene, if you want to, probably look at it from another dimension, just click on the Option key on your Mac, or probably the Alt key on your Windows, and you'll see this eye icon, and you'll be able to navigate through it this way. Now what we want is we want a player that would stand on this ground, right? And now is when the interesting bit will begin. Now is when we'll start adding assets or 3D objects to our scene, and we'll start to see how it eventually ends up looking. So let's just go to this folder called characters inside assets. Okay, let's just go inside. All right. So
Harshita,
yeah.
just the pink thing is
Yeah.
because for some reason the material is missing.
Right.
So on the objects, yeah, I think on the sprite renderer you need to set the material explicitly. I don't know why, but just that's what I've noticed.
So do you think just re-importing the package should solve the issue?
Maybe, but it doesn't let you. I tried.
Yeah. So, what I'd want to know is this issue happening for everybody, or is this just for me?
I picked 2D when I made my project, and the things are showing up just fine.
So, all right, you're saying that the project type is 2D and everything just rendered correctly out there?
Yes.
I see. So this is weird because when I imported the same project earlier in a 3D project, everything worked fine. But yeah, we can definitely give this approach a try. We can create a new project, which is a 2D project, and yeah, let's give it a different name this time. Codebar jump material testing or something like that. And let's see if re-importing the package here works. All right, we forgot to change the Unity version again. We go here. Just call it code bar. Yes, there we go. By now, I hope everybody is on the same page. We all have the editor installed, and we are at least not facing issues with installation. Or is there anybody who's still facing any issues?
Hi, so I managed to install the download and extract the starter files, and I've got a project open. But I think I am missing a couple of steps in terms of getting the stuff on screen that you had. Yeah, I guess I think I just I'm a bit unsure about what else I was supposed to do to get to where you're currently at.
Right, right. So what do you see on your screen right now? You're saying you've opened the editor, right?
Yeah, so I've just got like what you've got.
Right. So yeah, let's proceed from that step. Let's proceed from that step. Right when you're on your editor, right? Let's just go to assets and import our starter file package. So if you do not have the package downloaded already, you will see a link in the chat which has prototype starter files written on it. And you can just import the package via going on the custom package option and make sure you have it downloaded, you have it extracted. And you have to import this file, which has an extension called .unity package. And once I click on open, make sure you have all the assets checked. You can just do that by clicking all here and then click on import.
Awesome.
All right, for some strange reason, I'm still seeing the material issue here itself too, even in a 2D project. But I think we'll find a way to proceed even regardless. So one of the reasons for
Okay, I
getting yeah,
I
please.
just wanted to say I didn't know I was supposed to pick that one, so I picked the other 2D thing.
I see. I see.
Maybe it's about that. I don't know.
Uh I don't think this should be or so this is clearly an issue of materials not being, assigned and then us having to go and manually assign materials there or sprites there. So let's I think if it is working fine for the rest of you, it's great. I can find a way to proceed regardless of this. So what we can do right now is I can yeah, there should be yeah, so it's these textures that we'll have to probably regenerate or I think anything works. A 2D render pipeline or a 3D render pipeline, anything works. So there are folks who are not facing this pink material issue. I'll try changing this to if it is going to make a difference. All right, no worries. Irrespective of this pink material issue, we'll proceed regardless, right? So what we'll do right now is we'll just like get rid of this background, we'll get rid of the ground and we'll create probably our own objects and yeah, it should be fine. So let's say I want to create a plane for the player to run on, right? So I can just go create I can create a plane right away. I can scale it to something like 15, and that very well looks like a platform for a player to, run on. Now, let's say if you want a player there, the best thing to go or like the best option, the best way to proceed with it is to, just go in this folder called down, and you would have um, these, these prefabs here, which were ideally supposed to have like, they were supposed to look like a human, right? But for some reason, they are rendering all pink in my device. So what I'll do is I'll probably use a cube or something like that, something like a dummy player instead of an actual human being like player, right? Just give me a thumbs up if you can actually see these rendering properly in your project. Right. So what we'll do now is that what we basically want to achieve is we want to have a player, and this player should be able to jump over obstacles in a game, right? And ideally it should have been this thing, but let's say I've just created this cube and I call this cube a player. And what I wanted to do is to, probably have the ability to jump over obstacles and, have, some kind of movement associated with it. The first thing I would want to do is to make sure that we do not have such a bland white scene. So I'll just go to the materials folder. Oh, okay. I see from where we are getting this. I think this should solve our issue. Right. Now if I go here, okay, it's still not. Yeah, this is still better. This still looks like a human. Right. So I think our issue is solved. So what was happening was inside the materials folder, we had these materials and the shader for them was not rendering properly. We were getting an error here. So manually setting it to standard will fix the issue. So if you're also facing the pink issue by any chance, that would be fixed if you just opt for, let's say, the standard of shader, right? I'll just delete my cube since I don't need it anymore and I can have a proper player altogether. I've just added this player to my scene. Let's see if we can find a better looking player. Yeah, this should be good. So whichever player you like out of the characters, you can just add it to your scene. If you want to make sure your player and your, let's say, plane are not miles apart, which should not be the case if the project is working fine for you, you can just position both of them at X, Y, and Z coordinates of 0, 0, and 0. So this is my plane. I can just zoom into the scene, right? And if I just click on the player, I'll see that my player is somewhere over here, right? I would want them to be towards the beginning of this platform so that they can run across it. So I'll just move it via the arrows that we have. I'll also make sure that this plane, or I just want to go to the original state. Okay. So what I want to make sure is that when I eventually go to the game view, my player is visible here, right? Because the game view is what you eventually see in the game. So I'll try to position my player in a way that I can actually see them here. The good thing is that you can change the layout in Unity to your preference. So yeah, I've just positioned my player somewhere here, right? I want to make them face towards either left or right, preferably right in this case, because I want them to run towards that side. So I'll probably change the direction to something like 90, or it might be minus 90 in your project, right? So just try and position your player in a way that you can eventually see them in the game view and you can see them on the platform. And yeah, we should be good then. So there they are. If we move them slightly further ahead, we'll be able to see them here itself. right? So we now have our scene ready. We have a platform for the player to run on. We have a player. Now we'll get to the interesting bit, which is the code writing bit. Before the code writing bit, if there are any questions that need to be answered.
Oh, I had my
Uh,
hand up for a second, but then I realized I was basically just going to ask where the shader thing is for the characters, because I found it on the other materials, but I think I found it is just you have to click on like if you click on the character like in the screen, you don't
right.
necessarily see it, but if you go on the hierarchy and then click on it, then the shader thing comes up, right? Oh no, wait, I
Right.
think I lost it again.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So you'd see that a while back,
Oh yeah, got it.
back. So even these were rendering out to be pink, even though we had changed the shader to standard, right? But now when we look at them, they're perfectly fine here, right? So if you've changed the shader to standard, if you've changed the shader of materials to standard, you should be good. Just go to the characters bit and just drag and drop your character onto the scene and you'll be good.
And was there a way that you did that like to multiple of these
Yeah,
different
yeah, yeah,
prefabs?
yeah. So you can select all of them with the simple shift and select, right? Select the first one that you want, click on the shift key, select the last shader, and just set it to standard from here. And we should be good
Okay,
then, right?
awesome.
I hope we're all good up till this point, and we can finally jump on to the code writing bit.
Just one more thing. So I just managed to do what you just demonstrated on
Right,
the materials. So like now they all look how they're supposed to. And then I
right,
clicked in the characters farm folder, subfolder in the assets, and I selected all of them. But the thing in the inspector looks a little bit different, and now I don't see the shader in the options.
all right. So when you say it looks different in the inspector or in the
Yeah,
scene,
basically. Oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that, like, what I see in the inspector when I select multiple characters looks a bit different to what I see in the inspector when I select
Right.
multiple materials.
Right. So I think why that might be happening is because the character is rotated in a way that you cannot, probably see them correctly. So try clicking on the character. I mean, this is the character, right? Let's rename it to player or, let's give it a more appropriate name like a player. Try toggling their rotation here. Try something like, so if it's on a 0, even I would see something like this. But if I change it to -90°, they are suddenly facing left. If I change it to 90°, they're facing right. If I change it to 120°, they are somewhat facing me. Getting it? Is that what you want to
Oh,
ask?
no, so I mean, as in all the character prefabs in, for example, the farm subfolder are
Yeah,
still pink, and so I just wanted to click on, the same way that I applied the standard shader to all the materials.
right.
Oh, what I mean is in the inspector tab, I don't see the drop down menu to
Yeah,
change the shader for the characters.
right.
Uh, the
Just try
the
one.
inspector looks different.
Just try one thing. Just pick any character from here. Just try dragging them onto the hierarchy and just see if you see the shader in the scene. I think in the scene you should be able to see them with the shader, irrespective of how you see them here. If even if they're pink here, it's all right. Just try dragging them and putting them into the
Oh,
hierarchy.
okay, sure, cool. Uh,
Does that solve the issue?
Oh, yeah, it does. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So they
So
don't need to, yeah.
So it'll just take a slight while to, render to the actual colors from pink in the course library or in your project window. Otherwise, you're already good as soon as you change the shader to standard.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So now moving to the code writing bit. Inside the assets folder, just right click and let's create another folder for scripts. This is the general practice that we do. Inside the assets folder, there is a folder for scenes, scripts, animations, audios, and stuff like that. So we'll create a scripts folder and we'll create our first script, which is a player controller script. So in order to create the first player controller script, just right click here, go to the create option and choose C# script and give it a name like player controller. Make sure to not leave any spaces here in the name and you should be good. It'll take a second for the script to compile and yeah, we should be good.
So was that do we select a C# script?
Yeah. Go for C# script and give it a name like player controller, since we want to control the player with the script. So once we are here, what we want to do is we want to assign the script to this player of ours in the scene, right? So when you want to do that, there are multiple ways of doing that. I can simply drag and drop this script here, or I could, do an add component and type player controller because that's the name of my script. And yes, my script is attached to the player. So now we'll be controlling the behavior of this game object, which is the player game object, via whatever code we write here inside this script. This is the player controller script. Yeah, moving ahead. Are we all good? Should we move ahead? Yeah, so let's iterate over the connecting the script to the player bit, right? There are multiple ways to do it. One would be to just simply drag and drop the script into the inspector while you have the player object selected, right? So this way I've just added the script once again. I can remove it from here because I do not need it twice. Another way to add the script would be to simply go to the add component option and to type player here. And as soon as you type player, you'll start seeing your player controller script and you can simply attach the script from here.
So can I just ask, just to make sure I didn't miss anything? So that character that you have on screen, did you rename it to player and then do all of those things?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Right. So far, what all we've done, it would have been really straightforward have you had you not had the shader issue. So far what all we've done, we've added the player here to our hierarchy, to our scene. We've made sure that we can see the player in the game view. So we've positioned them in a way, we've changed their rotation such that they either face left or right? And we've created a script called player controller and assigned it to our player. And now we'll go ahead and write code.
Sorry, I just need 30 seconds to finish up.
Sure, go ahead. The rest of the folks can just open the player controller script meanwhile, and we can discuss what these two methods that we see here are. Annie, are we good? Can we resume?
So I just realized I hadn't done the make the player face the camera in the game view. So I was also just sorting that out.
All
And
right.
then I've just added the player controller script. Was that it? And now I
Yeah.
have also the script. But by the way, I wanted to ask because when I made the script, two windows from Visual Studio popped up for me. I wanted to check if that was supposed to happen because they're like two different windows with different bits of code on them. One is called playercontroller.cs and the other one is called like settings.json something.
Yeah, so you can just close the settings.json file, and playercontroller.cs is all that we need.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Right. So once you'll open the script, you'll see two methods, two functions which are added by default here, void start and void update. We'll be using these quite a lot. What we want to do right now is that we want to give the player the ability to jump, right? So before we do that, we'll have to see whether we'll be using start for that, whether we'll be using update for that, and what's the difference between that. I know there are people who are game developers within the attendees who already know the difference. But for those of you who don't know, so start, as you can see, which is, very evidently mentioned by the comment here, start is called before the first frame update, right? So as soon as you launch your game, and we'll see what launching your game means. I mean, as soon as you launch the editor, right? As soon as you press the play button, let's think of it like that. Then the start method is called before the first frame even updates. And when is the update method called? Update method is called once per every frame, right? So if you have to like understand the difference between these two, let's say you have to like cache the initial position of a player, right? Where they're standing, something like that. For something like that, you'd be doing that in start. But let's say you have to control the position of the player now via the arrow keys, right? Or you have to make the player jump via the spacebar key. For that, you would be giving, input to the player. That input you'd be giving it via the keys that I just mentioned, right? Or you might be using a controller. And that input could be at any instant during the game and not just in the beginning. So for tracking stuff like that, we use update. So right now, if everybody is aligned and everybody is settled and they have the player ready and the script opened, we'll just write our snippet of code to make the player jump, right? Before that, let's also do one more quick thing. Let's go back to the Unity editor, to our player, and let's add two components to this player, right? So in the inspector, just go to the add component option and add this component called rigid body. And let's add another component called box collider. Let's see what both of these components do. So what rigid body does is it makes our player susceptible to the forces of physics, right? It makes it susceptible to gravity. It assigns a mass to a player. It gives it a drag. It gives it an angular drag if we need that, right? So rigid body makes our player behave like a player would behave when they are subject to the forces of physics. And what does a box collider do? A box collider comes very handy when we have to detect collisions, right? So let's say this is a player and we go here and this is the box collider that we've added to them. We'll make sure to, modify the constraints of the box collider in a way that it fits the player properly. Because further down ahead in the game, we want to make sure um, that we detect the collisions of the player with the obstacle, right? That is why we've added the box collider here, and this is what we'll be leveraging in the code as we go ahead. So yeah, coming back to our script, I hope we're all done assigning the box collider and adding the box collider and the rigid body components to our player. Once that is done, let's write our code. So what we'll do right now is I'll create a variable called of the type rigid body. And I'll give it a nicer name, something like player rigid body, right? And I'd mentioned before that we usually, cache the components of any game object in start. So inside the start method, what we'll do is we'll take this variable, which is player rigid body. Okay, IntelliSense is doing too well a job. And what we'll do, once we have that, we'll use this default method in Unity called getComponent. What this method does is, we saw, right, that in the inspector, we assigned certain components like the rigid body or the box collider to our player. So what it'll do is getComponent will get hold of the component which you want. So if I just click on a tab here, what this piece of code is doing is, um, it is making sure that whichever this player rigid body, uh, the rigid body variable is, we are getting hold of its rigid body component. I'll change it to public right now and I'll let you know why I did that. Once we're here, now why we did this, because we want to add force to the rigid body. We want to make use of the rigid body component. We want to make sure that our player is susceptible to the forces of physics. And since jumping is something that is, a part of something that is governed by physics, we've gotten hold of the rigid body component. Once we are here, now let's make the player jump. So right now I'm writing this piece of code in the update method. So let's do one thing. We'll take our player rigid body. We will add force to it, right? Add force is again another default Unity method that you get. So once we add force to it, we have to decide the direction in which we want to add force to it, right? So if you want to make a player jump, in which direction should be adding force? Does it have to be up? Does it have to be down? Does it have to be left? Does it have to be right? A quick answer in the chat, please.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. So you want to make your player jump, right? And jumping would mean adding a force of some sort. So if you want to make a player jump, in which direction would you be making them jump? Would it be up, down, left, right? Right, up, right? So what we do here is we will get hold of vector3 component of the player and apply force in the up direction. And we will multiply it with a force factor of, let's say, 10. F here refers to float, right? And we'll see what this does to the player. What we also want to make sure is that the player does not jump in every frame, because update is definitely called once per frame, right? And we do not want a player to jump on every frame. We want them to jump only when we press a certain key, right? So we'll go here, we will create a condition. We'll create an if condition that a particular key is pressed. Then we can go ahead and make the player jump. So what we do when we have to take input from the player, we use the condition called input dot get key down, right? What this means is that whenever, okay, and we also assign a particular key code to a particular key, and then we determine which key we want to be pressed. So let's say what this piece of code here means is that if we press the space key, whatever is inside the if check would be executed. So we directly paste this here. If you want to use some other key instead of space, let's say you want to use the W key, you can simply use the W key also, and your player will jump whenever you press the W key, right? So we're using the default input system of Unity here, and that's why we're using the get key down method, which is again a default Unity method. And yeah, I'll change it back to space because space is the most conventional key we generally use to make a player jump. I hope everybody is aligned with this bit. Any questions with this bit so far? If not, we'll go and quickly check if our player is jumping or not.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, also I will need a moment after this to actually copy all this down, but I wanted to ask about the get component bit.
Right.
So player rigid body equals get component. Could
Right.
you explain how, like, what the get component, how that works?
Right. So the get component, it is working very literally to what it says, right? So if we go back to the editor, right, we'll see that we have a game object, and every game object can have certain components attached to it, right? So can you name the two components that we attach to a player?
So rigid body and box collider.
Collider, right? But how does the script know that a player has these components, right? So if we want to get those components quite literally, right? If you want to use those components in the script, then we can very conveniently use the get component method or the get component call. And inside the get component call, if you want to use rigid body, we can just mention rigid body over there. If we want to use box collider, we can go ahead and mention box collider. And whatever is the need, there could be other 100 components that we can use here, right? If you go to the add component option, you'll see a lot of other things. You'll see 2D animation, audio effects, and so much more. So get component can be used to actually get in cache whatever component you need to use later ahead in the code. So that's literally what we've done here.
Oh, okay, cool. So for in the case of, like, if you want a character, the player character, to jump, then you would need to get the rigid body component to be recognized here by the game engine so that it knows that it goes like up and then lands back down to and not fall through the ground.
Exactly. Right.
Cool.
Right.
Awesome, thanks.
So
I'm just gonna copy this down.
yeah, we'll do some quick tweaks, right, before we go ahead and test whether our player is jumping or not. So, I mean, using a hard coded value such as 10f is never recommended. So we'll turn it to a variable and we can call it public. Since this is the force with which the player jumps, we can call it jump force. Okay, so this needs to be a float value and we can call it jump force. And yeah, over here we can assign it to 10f, and we can rather use jump force here instead of using the float value altogether. So the good thing, so how a public or a private variable's behavior would change is that if you declare a variable to be public here, you would be able to see it in the inspector for that respective player, right? So right now, since this rigid body component that we've used here is public, we can actually see see the fields here, and we can actually change the jump force from here, or we can assign the player rigid body from here, and that's how we can proceed about it. So that's the difference between a public and a private declaration in terms of Unity itself. I hope that's clear. Since we do not need to give a reference to the rigid body here, I'll just change this to a private variable, right? Because our purpose is anyways served because we are doing a get component. So yeah, now we'll go and see if our player is capable of jumping. Let's
So
make sure.
could
Yeah,
I just ask, I was just wondering, because as I was typing the code into Visual Studio while looking at your screen, I noticed that some of the colors of certain words on my Visual Studio, it looks different to yours. Like some
right.
are the same, but certain ones are different, and I wanted to check, is that for a reason? Like, should they be the same color as yours?
Yeah, so that should not be a problem at all. One, I'm using a different IDE. I'm using Rider while you're using Visual Studio Code. That could be one of the reasons. And I think there are settings where you can set the color for like probably, the data type, the variable, the constant value. And you can actually like modify those colors from there. I believe there's a setting. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So the major difference here in the colors would be because of our different IDEs. I am on Rider while you're on Visual Studio.
Oh, okay, cool, cool.
That should not be a problem as long as any of the variables is not like, any of the piece of code is not throwing an error and is turning out to be bright red right away.
Yeah. And about the just because I realized you have the semicolons at the end, and I haven't been to any of the other code bar sessions, and I'm like brand new to coding pretty much.
Right,
Could you explain what the semicolon is for?
right. Okay, so if you remove the semicolon, you'd see errors would start coming up in your code, right? So what a semicolon does is a semicolon marks the end of whatever line of code you're writing, right? It
Right.
tells the IDE that player rigid body that this statement and this statement are two different statements. That's how it is working. Otherwise, there's no way for the IDE to know whether this thing. Okay, so let's take an example,
Yeah.
right? uh let's say there's a line of code. Okay, we won't touch that. Let's do it here. Let's call it jump velocity or something like that, right? So what a semicolon does is, right. So just because I clicked on enter here and started writing code from here, the IDE does not know that these are two different statements, which they are not, right? Only when I add a semicolon here will the IDE know that my first statement is complete, and now it has to treat this statement as a different statement of its own, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, so in programming, semicolons are like semicolons, they form a very crucial part of whatever programming you'll do. And I think that goes irrespective of language. In all languages, you'll like find them, right? So they mark the end of a statement. Are we good? Should we proceed? Does
Yeah.
that answer the question?
Thanks very much.
Right. So now we've written the code to make a player jump. Now we'll be checking whether it actually works or not. And to check whether it works, what we'll be doing is we'll be launching a scene right away. How do we do that? Uh, you would be able to see this little play button over here. Just try clicking on that button and click on the spacebar key. Okay, and it is not jumping. Oh, wow.
Give it a bit more welly. The jump force.
Jump force. Okay. So now let's do one thing. Now we know why this is happening. Let's increase the jump force to something like 100, and let's see how the player behaves now. So I pressed the spacebar key because spacebar key was the input, and you'll see a very slight jump, right? Which is not what we want, right? So there are two ways of dealing with it. One would be to increase your jump force to something like 1000 or something like 500 and see how the player behaves. Or there's a more ideal way, which is to add something called force mode. And there are 4 different kind of force modes you will see here: impulse, acceleration, velocity. You can try out how different force modes would like behave, in different scenarios. For now, we'll go with force mode impulse. What force mode impulse would do is it would make your player jump almost instantaneously, which is not happening right now. And that too with lesser jump force, let's say with something like 20. So if this is my player, I want to make sure I edit their box collider constraints just so it doesn't appear that it is floating in the sky. Now when I go back to my game and press the play button, let's see how the player behaves now. I press the jump key. You'll see they still jumped quite a lot, and now they are back. We do not want this jump to be that big as well. So we'll tweak the value here. But you can see the position of the player changing in a way that you know that they're jumping. So let's try something like jump force 10, and now if I press the spacebar, I think that's a reasonably good jump. That's a reasonably good jump. So yeah, our player can jump now. Uh, I hope everybody's player is jumping.
Harshita,
Yeah,
I just have a question because I just noticed when I click on my player character and I look at the player controller script,
right.
it doesn't have the jump force thing underneath, even though I believe I put the stuff in correctly in Visual Studio, but maybe I need to double check that.
All right. Uh, Let me do one thing. Let me just share this piece of code for you. Did you add the force mode, or have you not added the force mode?
Oh yeah, no, I think I was a bit behind and I forgot to, yeah, look at that. That's probably it then.
That will fix the issue for you. That will fix the issue for you. So
Awesome, thanks.
yeah. So yeah, our player can now jump.
Oh, sorry, could you paste it or can I see it again quickly? I just need to.
I'll paste it in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so there are folks who are facing issues with the player going down nonstop. So I think Jody has tried fixing the problem, but that's most probably because of the components and the box collider, right? So just make sure before you play your game that the box collider, you have a box collider component, right? That you added to your player. If you go to the scene, just make sure that the box collider actually encloses the player and it is not, haywire or somewhere.
Harshita,
Yeah.
I think it's because in the scene that is in the starter pack, for some reason, the box collider on the ground is this tiny kind of cube in the middle of the
Right,
ground. So you either
right,
have to move your player over the
right,
top of it or to delete, as I've instructed, to delete the component and re-add the box collider back.
right. So yeah, so as was just mentioned, you can either, just so when you say the box collider is not like correctly configured, that's for the player, right? And not for the ground.
And no, it's for the ground. It's not the right shape.
It's not the right shape.
Yeah.
I see, I see. But okay, okay, yeah. So if you have a ground object in your scene, you could just, let's say if this is the ground, folks, you could just like try removing the existing box collider component, which is already there, which I do not have, by the way, because I added the plane manually. And you could, add another component, call it the box collider, and position it in a way that it encloses the ground. And when I say it encloses, I mean, if you just like go and add the box collider to the ground, that would serve the purpose for you.
Oh, I think I just realized I must have missed that step because even though I at some point I made a like just a 2D, was it 2D? I just went in I made a plane, but I realized I don't have the. Wait, what? Where was the? Oh, is it in the? Sorry, I'm just looking at the scene hierarchy. Was there something? Did you just rename it ground, or because for a second I was thinking I missed something,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
basically have like the same as you. Okay, you just okay. Sorry, ignore me.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the issue that you're facing?
So for me, I have that plane,
Hmm.
and I've just gone and added a box collider to it, and I noticed it already had a mesh collider.
So if you had a plane, there's no need to add a box collider there, right?
Oh,
It
okay.
already has a mesh collider added to it, and it would more or less serve the same purpose, right? Just
Yeah,
make sure that your player, just go to your player, go to the box
yeah,
collider component, and when you see this edit collider option, just click on it. You would be able to see the bounds of this box, right?
yeah,
From here, just make sure that this, I mean, the lower edge, that is not way too low inside the ground, right? That is
yeah,
somewhere down the edge of the plane itself.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Does it need to be like if the box collider goes a bit above the head, but maybe doesn't fully cover down to the bottom of the feet. Is that okay, or could that
Yeah,
be
that's totally fine. That should be totally fine.
okay? Cool.
How that would look is that your player might slightly sink into the ground, which again should not be the case here because the ground also has its own bounds. But see, yeah, this is how the player looks. It would not sink.
Okay.
Is the player syncing issue solved for folks, or is there anybody who's still facing the issue?
So, okay, yeah, I'm noticing now that my player is like his knees are in the ground, which is better than completely falling. But yeah, I think that's just I'm having a bit of a struggle, like actually editing the box collider. I don't know why I like keep
Right,
trying to like click on it and then I'm not
right,
managing.
right.
Um,
Yeah, so we can help you out with that. We can help you out with that. So just position yourself in the scene in such a way that you can, see the player from, down below. How you can do that is by clicking the Alt option in Windows and the Option key in Mac, and you would be able to just do that, and you'll be able to see this eye view and just
oh
like
yeah,
across the scene. Once you're there, just click on the Edit Collider option. You'll see this little tiny box over here. Just
yeah,
try toggle it in a way that it is not. So right now your box glider must be really way up because the knees are sinking. Try to bring it slightly down.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Got it. Yeah. Now when I press play, the character is basically he on the ground just without like it just like almost like as if he just did like the tiniest jump, but his feet are on the ground, so I guess that's fine.
Uh, did you press the key that you were supposed to press to make the player jump?
Yeah, well actually that happened before I pressed anything. That happened like in the first like moment as soon as I pressed play, but when I press the space bar, nothing happens.
So when you press the space bar, you're saying nothing happens. Okay. Let's look at the jump force. Let's confirm two things. One thing would be, have you added the force mode here?
Yeah, so I did that force mode dot impulse, but I'm
Right.
just realizing now that I still don't have the thing that should say jump force in the player controller
All
component.
right. All right. Um, I think I did paste the code for you right there in the chat, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
should I just copy and paste the whole thing and then like delete the like from line 5 public class, just delete everything that I have there and
Yeah.
then paste what you sent?
Yeah. You can do that, or you can just um, if you don't have jump force, you can just declare this variable on line number 9 and yeah, use this jump force over here. I think
Okay.
that's yeah, that's what you might be missing.
I have that one there. I also have the public float jump force equals 10F on line 9. I have the player rigid body dot add force vector free up asterisk jump force. Well, yeah, I have the whole line. Yeah, this is like after I just copied everything. Maybe I'm just wondering if there was maybe something prior to that that maybe I haven't done.
Okay. So try going back to the editor and checking if you can see jump force now. If you have everything in the
No, it's still not there.
okay. Okay. Uh, did you try replacing the code altogether? Or
Yeah,
one?
yeah, that's what I just did a minute ago. I copied and pasted what you sent from line 5 down.
Okay. Is this a public variable or a private variable?
Uh, sorry, one second. Oh, that one, let me double check. That public float jump force. Yeah, I have that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if it is public, it should like reflect here in your player controller. So I see somebody writing in the chat that system.collections.specialized should, um, that should make a difference. No, that should not be making a difference. As long as you're using Unity engine here, right now we're not using any kind of capability for system.collections.specialized. So I don't think that would be making a difference. So yeah, try going to player once again, or and then now see if your script has compiled, the player controller script has compiled. By compiled, I mean there's no ongoing, progress box on the engine.
No, was that? Oh wait, sorry. Am I supposed to click on something after I come out of Visual Studio?
No, 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 nothing. Just click on Unity once. I mean, just click on the scene.
Yeah. So I'm back in Unity, and yeah, still it just like where it says player controller script, it's just the script thing. It still doesn't say jump force under it. It's
Right.
just
Would you want to I mean, would you want to like share your,
My screen?
yeah, would you want to do that? And
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'll just quickly do that.
yeah. So, okay. Okay. So we know the issue. So you've not saved your scene. So try doing a Control+S now.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, so that was the, oh, okay.
Let's see what difference it makes.
Okay, Control S. Still
Okay.
looks like that.
Could you go inside the player controller script?
Yeah. You mean on, oh yeah, I need to change
Yeah.
my screen.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, why would it?
It looks like it hasn't been saved, judging by the dot in the top right
Dot,
corner.
exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
is that what I'm missing?
Try saving the script now.
Oh, okay, so I don't know how I missed the very key thing there. Oh, okay, there we go. All right, thank you so much. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. Is it showing now?
Oh, sorry, I think I just muted myself. Yeah, I said it like appeared right after saving, so I've got the jump force now.
Right. So
Okay.
I hope everybody's player is jumping now. Nobody's facing the sinking issue, sinking into the ground issue now, and the player is jump. You can very well toggle the jump force, right? Um, you can see changing it. You can try changing the values and see how it is looking for you. Yeah. So let's try making the player jump again, and we'll notice we'll be able to notice a flaw in the system, that if I press the spacebar key multiple times, my player can eventually jump till it reaches I don't know where. So if you'll see, the player is just ascending and ascending and ascending in its height, and eventually there'll be a point when it'll come back. But right now, if you just look very carefully at the transforms and look at the Y position, it's just increasing incessantly, and this is not what we want, right? So what I basically did was I just launched my scene and I pressed the spacebar multiple times. And what I see now is that my player has probably reached space and now it is coming back slowly and steadily. And so they just fell, and this is not what we want. So what we'll do in a case like that, we do not want the player to jump multiple times. So what we'll do is we'll prevent this multiple jumping thingy. What we'll do is we'll introduce a boolean, right? So we'll introduce a boolean of the kind, let's say, okay, uh, yeah, we can call it is grounded or something like that, right? So this boolean will determine whether or not the player will be able to jump again. So what we'll do here is we'll be checking that if the player is already in the air, if the player is already flying, then what we'll do is we'll make sure that they do not like go ahead and, you know, fly again or jump again. So yeah, let's do a little thing here. We've added this boolean here. Inside this if check, when our player is already in the air, we'll set this boolean to false because our player is not grounded right now, right? And the default value could be true for this because by default the player is grounded, right? And we also need another, yeah. So I mean, I'm just writing I'm not sure if we'll have time to, cover that bit, but I'm writing an on collision method here. And what I'm doing here is I'm setting this boolean back to false here. So, I mean, back to true here, right? We'll see how we're leveraging this on collision enter method later. From other, we can change it to something like collision. So yeah. So what we've done here is we've introduced a boolean. Booleans have true or false values. They can take either of the values. And once once the player is in the air, we set this boolean to false. And once they are probably colliding with something, which in our case would be a ground, we would set this value to true. Um, right now, I don't think, yeah, so that is one thing. I'm not sure if we'll be able to cover the entire flow. I'd want to know from a quick, like a quick poll in the chat as to what is the thing that we want to do in the next 15 minutes. Because I think that's the time we have. Do we want to introduce an obstacle and make the obstacle move and make sure that the player jumps over it? Or do you want to like, uh, yeah, probably see how this multiple jumping thingy is prevented? What do we want to do? I have a personal bias towards the obstacle. I think we should see how the obstacle is looking and how we can jump over it.
I just wanted to say, sorry, I just saved in Visual Studio and then went back to Unity to press
Right.
play to see if the thing had been fixed. But it says when I press play, it says all compiler errors have to be fixed before you can enter play mode.
Right. So you'll go here on the console, right? And you might be seeing some red errors. I mean, some like statements in like red color here.
Yeah.
And could you read that out? Could you read the error out?
Yeah, so one that is posted just a minute ago, it says assets, scripts, player controller.cs 3314, error CS1519, invalid token void in class record struct or interface member declaration.
Right. So this is very easy to debug, and this way we can also like explore what the console section does, right? So the console section of your project that will log all kinds of errors. You can also like use it for, logging probably flows in the game or stuff like that. So it very clearly tells you where the problem is. It is telling you that in line number, I think 33 in the player controller script, there is something
Yeah.
that is not right. So if you'd like, probably open the player controller script and go
Oh,
to line.
yeah. I just realized the spelling mistake. So, yeah.
So, so yeah, we can also, if you want to see how the console works, we can quickly add a debug log here that says debug.log jump. And now every time when I press the space key, I will see this jump statement inside the console log. So we are here. I made my player jump. And yes, I made them jump thrice and I can see jump printed multiple times here. And yeah, let's quickly move to the obstacle bit. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, could you just show the code that you just added for the log?
Yeah. So I wrote debug.log
Oh,
and then
okay.
inside quotes, whatever I want to get printed in the log, I just wrote that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Right. So yeah, let's see if we can, try our hands with an obstacle. So what I'll do is we'll go to the obstacles folder. We can see quite a few obstacles over here. I'll just choose one real quick and I'll drag and drop it in the scene. I'll probably rename it to something like obstacle. And I'll place it ahead of the player. So I'll place it somewhere like this. Or this seems like too. Okay, let's choose some other obstacle, some nicer obstacle, and use that. So yeah, this is the obstacle. And even this does not have a color. I wanted something with a color so that has seen somewhat looked better. Yeah, there we have. So I just added an obstacle to the scene from the obstacles folder. I just renamed it to obstacle. Yeah, there we have it. So once everybody is here, now we'll be creating another script for the obstacle and making the obstacle move towards the player such that the player has to jump over it, right? So is everybody aligned? Can we go ahead? All right. Let's go to the scripts folder. We'll create a new script. We can call it something like obstacle movement, right? And just like we did for the player, we will assign the script to the obstacle. I'll simply drag and drop it here. And I'll open the script. We again have our start and update method like we always have in every Unity C# script. And let's see how we can make the obstacle move. Is everybody following?
Sorry, I just made the script and named it, and then we just need to drag it to the inspector of the obstacle, right?
Right, absolutely right. Right. Now what we want to do is we want to make the obstacle move, right? So what we'll do for movement, right? Earlier, when we wanted to make the player jump, we were leveraging this component called rigid body. But now, since we wanted to just, move the obstacle, we want to move it probably towards the player, right? We can simply leverage which component? The transform component, right? So I can do something like transform.translate, which is something that we use a lot in Unity. And we again have a vector3 here, right? This is something that we used for the jump also, if you remember. And we'd used a vector3 dot up in the case of the player because we wanted them to move upwards, right? But now we want the obstacle to move towards the player. Let's say, I mean, not let's say, we want the obstacle to move to the left direction. So over here, we'll just multiply it by left. And then we also have something called time.delta time. We'll come to what it means. And we would also want some factor by which we are, some speed factor by which we are making this obstacle move. So let me call this obstacle movement speed or something like that. Yeah, obstacle movement speed. And of course, it will throw an error for me. Why? Because we've not defined what obstacle movement speed variable means to us. So we'll go here. We'll again create a public float. Float is the data type here, and we will call it obstacle movement speed. So what we're doing here is, in the update method, which is called once per every frame, we are making the obstacle move towards the left with an obstacle movement speed and a factor known as time.delta time. I think we might be running out of time soon. So what is time.delta time and how it works is something that I'd want you to look up. It's very interesting how this works. right? And can anybody tell me from the discussion so far why we have called this method in update? I mean, how would this movement behave? Would the obstacle only move when a certain key is pressed, or would it move all throughout the game? I'm just narrowing down the scope of the question now. So now, since we've called this method in update, I mean this transform.translate method in update, would the obstacle move when a certain key is pressed, or would it move all throughout the game?
Doesn't it need the condition in order to have it only move, when the player interacts? Like right now, it would just keep
Right,
like
right,
updating with each frame, right?
right. So right now, if we press play, what we'll see is that this, as soon as we press play, Dylan is absolutely right. It would move every frame and it would like move throughout the game, right? So as soon as we press play, what we'll see is that, let's see what it looks like. Let's see it for ourselves. Okay. Okay, so it did not move because in the inspector here, we did not change the obstacle movement speed from 0 to a tangible float value. So I'll just change it here and position it somewhere here, and in the inspector, I'll change the movement speed to something like 8 or something like slower, because we just want to see how the movement looks right now. Yeah. So this is how it moves, and it'll keep on moving. If in the scene, if you'll see, it'll keep on moving as long as you have the play button pressed. So yeah, your answers were correct. And how we want it to behave is something that we can, obviously change, right? But somebody was mentioning that we wanted to move only when the player interacts with it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why would we want that. We want the player to be in a state of, constant state of action where they're like repeatedly jumping. And if the obstacle is not moving towards them, it should be them moving towards the obstacle. So we could have done like either of the two things, right? So we could have made the obstacle move towards the player, or the player move towards the obstacle, so that it actually seems like the player is running, right? So yeah, I mean, before proceeding forward, I would like to ask Kimberly if it is fine, or if we like need to wind up the session because it's time.
What's the next thing you wanted to do?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I just want to show how we can spawn multiple obstacles. That's
Okay,
the
yeah. Like, I mean, if it's going to take like another 5 minutes, then yeah, please,
right,
yeah, go ahead.
right. So we can keep that quick, and
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that sounds like a good idea.
yeah. So the thing about our game is that we do not want just one obstacle, right? We want the obstacles to keep coming over and over and over again. So for that, we'll be doing something interesting. We will be creating an empty object. We can call it something like obstacle spawner, because it would be responsible for spawning obstacles. And we could create a new script called, and we could give it the same name, right? We could give it the same name. We could call it obstacle spawner. Again, we now know how we can assign a script to our game object. We simply, okay, I assigned the wrong script. I'll remove it. Yeah, we simply go there. We uh, assign the script and we go inside the script and we see what we can do. But before that, what we'll do is we'll create a prefab out of our obstacle. And if you're wondering what a prefab is, let me just create one and show you, right? So what I'll do is I will just drag and drop this obstacle into this folder called prefab. I want an original prefab and not a variant. And what that would do is, what a prefab would do is, a prefab can act as a reusable component, right? So you see bullets in games, right? Uh, yeah, we'll come to the question, but you see bullets in games, right? To have a bullet, to have multiple bullets in the scene from the get-go, that could be challenging. But what you might want is that you want to spawn them, right? Uh, Again and again and again. So that could be done via something like prefab. Yes, Jody, we were coming to that bit. I wanted to show this via a tag, right? So yeah, we can very much so what Jody is mentioning right now is that when we're double jumping, when we're pressing the space bar multiple times, our player keeps on jumping. So before going to that bit, I wanted to show the obstacle bit, which is why I kept it in between, right? So yeah, we can go back quickly do that, right? So what we want is that our player jumps only when the key is pressed and only when they are grounded. So if we add a check of is grounded, uh, only then the player should be jumping. In your, I think here I see a check called is not grounded. I think, correct me if, yeah, is grounded. Is grounded is the check that we are using here. And once we add this check, what this would do is that a player would not now, jump multiple times. So once we've added this check, the player will only jump when it is not already in the air and when it is grounded. So we've added an and condition here. We'll also use this boolean later when we, work with tags, but I think we might not have the time for this. So I'll quickly go through the obstacle spawning bit, right? So yeah, we've created an obstacle spawner. We've created a prefab for our obstacle that is a reusable component. And what we want is that our obstacle should like augment again and again and again after a certain span of time. So we'll go inside this method. We'll create this public reference called a public game object. Yeah, I'll just press the tab. Obstacle prefab is a fair enough name that IntelliSense has suggested. And what I'd want is that I create a method. Let me call this method something like obstacle spawn. And inside this method, I would use something called instantiate. We will see what instantiate does. I'll simply press a tab right now. So what instantiate does is it would make this obstacle, spawn at this particular transform dot position with this particular quaternion identity, which is, the identity usually associated with the rotational properties of a game object. So just like time dot delta time, I'd want you to look up quaternion dot identity also yourself. And now we'll see from where we will be calling the obstacle spawn method, right? So from our start method, we can use something like invoke repeating, right? What is invoke repeating doing? Invoke repeating would call a particular method. We've mentioned the name here. And we see these two values here. We will define what these two values mean. So one could be private float. One could be the start time. And instead of just using a float value here, I would use this variable. And we can use another float called not an end time, but something like a repeat time, right? So yeah, what we're doing here is that invoke repeating would call this particular method after an initial delay of start time. And we can define start time here, something like 3 seconds. And it would keep calling this method again and again and again after whatever value we specify in repeat time, let's say four seconds, right? So yeah, we have that. Another thing I would want to edit is this position. I would like to have a spawn position. Yeah, spawn position is a fair enough variable name. And I could specify where I would want it to be. So right now my obstacle is at an X position of 20. So that is a pretty fair position to be augmented at. So I could like just keep it 2500. And yeah, instead of using transform.position there, I could use spawn position. And we can see what the game looks like. Let's just see. And then we'll be done. Since we already have an obstacle spawner, we do not need the obstacle in our scene. We can right away delete it. And yes, we definitely need to assign the obstacle prefab here because we have a public game object reference that we've created here. So we'll go here. We will search for our obstacle prefab, which we had created in the prefabs folder. Once I go here, I'll just assign the prefab here. And now let's just see what the behavior of a player and our obstacles is right now. Yeah. Okay. It did not spawn any obstacles as of now. Okay. So here's the issue. So the method name that we are using here and here is different. So that is why this method is not being called at all. So I'll probably just rename the method and now we should be good. We should be seeing our obstacles now. Yeah, so here we have our obstacle. It is moving towards left and all of these obstacles are spawning after regular intervals. We can obviously, definitely this is something, these are values, the repeat rate and the start time, these are values that we can tweak. We can make the game a lot more faster. And when we like go into like a slightly more complex area, we can also have the obstacles spawning at irregular intervals rather than regular intervals right now. So yeah, you can see our obstacles are, just increasing and increasing and increasing because we've been spawning them. So this was the obstacle spawning bit. Of course, there's a lot we can do with the game right now. A collision with the obstacle could end the game and stuff like that. But I think we are running short of time and that is stuff that we can save for later.